Let's get this out of the way. Being intimidating isn't about walking into a room and demanding attention. It's not about being the loudest, the most polished, or the person with all the answers. It's about walking into a space fully rooted in who you are. And sometimes that's exactly what shakes people. So if you've ever been called too much, too intense, or hard to read, listen up. This might be less about what's wrong with you and more about what's powerful within you. Let's be honest, choosing authenticity over approval is not some Pinterest quote level decision you make once and coast on forever. It's a daily, sometimes hourly commitment. It's sitting with the question, do I want to be liked or do I want to be real? Let's get clear. Being authentic doesn't mean being rude, reckless, or raw all the time. It means being honest with yourself first, then with the world. And here's the thing people don't always say out loud. Being authentic will cost you. It'll cost you some relationships that were built on who you pretended to be. It'll cost you opportunities that require you to shrink, to nod along when your gut is screaming no. It might even cost you popularity because the world doesn't always reward real. But you know what you gain? Peace. The kind that lives deep in your bones. The kind that doesn't get rattled when someone disapproves of your choices. The kind that whispers, I'm proud of how I showed up, even if no one clapped. When you choose authenticity, you're saying, I'd rather be misunderstood than misrepresent myself. I'd rather disappoint others than betray myself. I'd rather stand alone in truth than blend in with a lie. And let's not pretend it's easy, because we were raised in systems that taught us to please, to perform, to perfect. We learned early that approval was the currency of belonging. Smile more, shrink more, don't rock the boat, stay small. But authenticity, it's the boat rocker. It's the truth teller. It's the part of you that says, I'm not going to contort myself to make you comfortable with who I am. That's intimidating. Not because you're aggressive, but because you're free. And people who aren't free will often see your authenticity as a threat when really it's an invitation. You're showing them what it looks like to live without the mask, to be both messy and magnificent, to show up not polished, but whole. And let's get this straight. Authenticity isn't loud. Sometimes it's quiet as hell. It's walking away when everything in you wants to explain. It's holding your ground without raising your voice. It's choosing silence, not out of fear, but because peace doesn't require performance. So if you find yourself caught in that tug of war between being liked and being true, pause, ask yourself, is this version of me sustainable? Can I keep living like this and still recognize myself in the mirror? Because approval fades, but authenticity builds. It builds trust, self-respect in the kind of life that feels like home, not a performance stage. So show up real, even when it shakes the room. Especially when it shakes the room. Because the world doesn't need another perfect image, it needs your truth. Not roses, not grand gestures, not romantic mystery or smoke and mirrors. The kind that says, here's who I am, here's what I need, here's what I mean. The kind that leaves no one guessing. When clarity is your love language, you're not interested in emotional hide and seek. You don't drop hints and hope someone picks them up. You don't sugarcoat your truth or bury it under politeness. You say the hard things, the honest things, because you'd rather cause a moment of discomfort than a lifetime of confusion. And here's the paradox. People often say they want honesty, but when you give it, When you're that person who speaks with boldness and directness, who doesn't dance around or dilute the truth, you're called intense, harsh, cold, but really, you're loving them the best way you know how, with clarity. Let's be real, clarity takes courage. It's easier to avoid, to tiptoe, to hope people just get you, but you've lived enough life to know that vague communication builds fragile connections. So you don't do vague. You tell people where you stand. You ask for what you need without guilt. You express what's working and what's not before resentment gets a seat at the table. That doesn't mean you're blunt just to be blunt. It doesn't mean you don't care how your words land. It means you care so much that you'd rather face temporary awkwardness than long-term disconnect. When clarity is your love language, you also become a truth teller in how you receive communication. You listen for what's not being said. You ask follow-up questions. You notice the gaps between someone's words and their actions. And you don't play games, not because you don't know how, but because you refuse to. You know that clarity is love in friendships, in family, in romantic relationships, in leadership. You don't want people guessing where they stand with you. And you don't want to guess either. Let's call something out here. Our culture doesn't always celebrate clarity. It romanticizes mystery. It confuses silence with strength. It tells us to be chill, play it cool, don't be too much, don't ask too soon. But that's not your rhythm. You don't play small so others can stay comfortable. You don't hide your feelings behind strategy. You lead with truth, even when it costs you, because you know, really know that clarity is one of the most sacred ways we honor ourselves and others. So here's what clarity sounds like in real life. I like you, but this isn't working for me. This is what I need right now. I don't have the capacity for this conversation today, but I care. I'm confused by your behavior. Can we talk about it? No, not this time. Not at the cost of my peace. Simple? Yes. Easy? Absolutely not. But real? Always. And that's what you're here for. You're not here to pretend. You're not here to pacify. You're here to build connections that don't just look good on the outside, but feel good on the inside. So keep choosing clarity even when it makes people uncomfortable. Keep speaking your truth even when your voice shakes. Keep being direct even when others try to label it as too much. Because clarity isn't cruelty. It's compassion with a backbone. It's love that refuses to manipulate. It's respect in its rawest form. And if that's how you love, that's not intimidating. That's liberating. They're not ultimatums. They're not punishments. And they're definitely not emotional shutdowns wrapped in barbed wire. Boundaries are bridges. They're how we honor connection without abandoning ourselves. They're the way we teach people how to love us with clarity, not confusion. But here's the truth. For a lot of people, especially those who've benefited from your lack of boundaries in the past, your new boundaries can feel like rejection, like coldness, like punishment. Why? Because you're no longer overextending, no longer saying yes when everything in your gut screams no, no longer tolerating the things you used to swallow in silence. And when you stop betraying yourself, people who got used to that version of you might not like the new one. Boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about letting people in with intention. Walls are built from fear. Boundaries are built from self-respect. Walls say, I will never let anyone hurt me again, so I'm closing off. Boundaries say, I've been hurt before and I've learned how to protect my peace while still leaving room for connection. Big difference. Because when we build walls, we don't just keep out harm, we also keep out love. We keep out growth, vulnerability, healing. Walls isolate, boundaries filter. Here's what boundaries sound like in real life. I'm not available for that kind of conversation right now. I love you and I need space. I can't help with that, but I hope you find the support you need. I need to end this call if it continues in this tone. That doesn't work for me anymore. Notice the pattern? Firm, clear, kind, no drama, no guilt, just truth, held with grace. Boundaries are a form of emotional maturity. They say, I care about you enough to be honest with you, and I care about myself enough to not abandon my values to keep you comfortable. But here's the hard part, especially for people who were taught that love equals sacrifice. Setting boundaries will activate your guilt. You'll feel like you're doing something wrong. You'll question if you're being selfish. You'll wonder, am I too much? Am I too distant? Am I pushing people away? And that's when you need to remind yourself, you're not pushing people away. You're protecting the version of you that used to stay small to be accepted. And that version, she's tired. She's done bleeding herself dry to feel loved. Boundaries are how you reclaim your energy. They're how you stop pouring into relationships that only take and never give. They're how you stop feeling resentful for saying yes when your whole body needed a no. And here's the beautiful twist. The people who truly love you, they won't just respect your boundaries, they'll be grateful for them. Because clear boundaries create safe relationships. Not safe as in comfortable, but safe as in truthful. Safe as in I know where I stand with you. Safe as in I trust that you'll tell me the truth instead of pretending everything is fine while silently pulling away. That's what boundaries do. They remove the guesswork. There's a quiet kind of power in people who can sit with discomfort and still choose grace. If that's you, you already know you hold space, not grudges. And that might confuse people because we live in a world where cutting people off is celebrated as strength, where revenge is glorified, where silence is weaponized, where passive aggression gets masked as emotional intelligence. But you're built differently. You're not afraid to sit in the hard stuff, to say this hurt me without needing to hurt back, to name what happened without rewriting the whole story, to cast yourself as the victim and them as the villain. You don't deny the pain, you honor it. You don't pretend things didn't happen, you acknowledge them, but you don't become them. You've learned that holding a grudge is like swallowing poison and hoping someone else dies. It doesn't work. It never did. Holding space means making room for your own feelings and for the complexity of others. It means creating a pause between what happened and how you respond. It's asking what's really going on here, what's mine to carry, and what's not. That pause, that space, that's where maturity lives. That's where healing happens. But let's not sugarcoat it. Holding space is hard. It means facing your emotions instead of numbing them. It means choosing conversation when you'd rather ghost. It means responding with integrity when your ego wants to clap back. People might say you're too forgiving. They might mistake your calm for weakness. They might think you're passive because you're not retaliating, but they don't understand. It takes immense strength to stay soft in a hard moment, to let someone be accountable without needing to shame them, to walk away with dignity instead of leaving chaos in your wake. That's not passivity, that's power with emotional intelligence behind it. And holding space doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. You're not a doormat, you're a boundary setter. You can love someone and still say, this doesn't work for me. You can hold space and still walk away. You can forgive and still decide never to let that kind of behavior near your peace again. Because forgiveness doesn't mean re-entry. Forgiveness means freedom. For you, it means saying, I'm not going to carry this weight one day longer than I have to. I release it, not because they earned it, because I deserve it. When you hold space, you hold room for healing yours and sometimes theirs. You create a culture of honesty in your relationships. You show people that pain doesn't have to become punishment and mistakes don't have to turn into exile. You invite accountability without cruelty. You speak truth without humiliation. You leave people thinking, I never felt judged, but I did feel seen. That's rare, that's powerful, that's transformational. So keep holding space. Keep being the person who doesn't let bitterness build a home inside them. Keep being the person who feels deeply without drowning. Keep showing up with that rare mix of softness and strength. Because in a world quick to cancel and slow to understand, you are proof that grace is still possible. And that is the kind of legacy that changes lives. Confidence is not arrogance. Confidence is rooted in truth. Arrogance is built on insecurity dressed up as certainty. Big difference. Confidence says, I know who I am. Arrogance says, I'm better than you. Confidence is quiet, steady, secure. Arrogance is loud, defensive, always reaching for attention. And if you're someone who walks into a room with quiet self-respect, don't be surprised if people confuse the two. See, when you're grounded in your own worth, when you don't shrink to fit into rooms or inflate to dominate them, you become intimidating, not because you're doing too much, but because you're not begging for permission to exist. Confidence makes people feel safe. Arrogance makes people feel small. And here's what a lot of people won't tell you. It takes more humility to be confident than it does to be arrogant. Because real confidence doesn't need to prove. It doesn't need the spotlight. It doesn't need applause to feel valuable. Real confidence sounds like, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. This is what I bring to the table. That's not for me, and that's okay. I'm proud of who I'm becoming, no flex, just truth. You've probably been on both sides of this. You've felt the pressure to tone yourself down, to not seem too confident, especially in spaces that weren't built for your kind of voice. You've been in rooms where confidence was misread as arrogance because people weren't used to someone speaking with clarity and calm certainty. And you've probably been underestimated too, because people assumed that if you weren't loud, you weren't strong, if you weren't performing your power, you must not have any. But that's the thing about confidence. It doesn't announce itself, it arrives. And when it does, it shifts the atmosphere. Let's name a difference even deeper. Arrogance needs validation. Confidence validates itself. Arrogance brags. Confidence lets results speak. Arrogance centers ego. Confidence centers truth. Arrogance says, I'm always right. Confidence says, I'm willing to be wrong and I still respect myself. Because confidence isn't afraid of being seen fully. It's not built on being perfect. It's built on being real. And if you're someone who embodies that, don't be surprised if it unsettles people. Some people are more comfortable around insecurity because it doesn't challenge their own. But don't shrink. Don't water yourself down. Don't dim the light just to make others more comfortable in the shadows. You're not here to be palatable. You're here to be authentic. And confidence, it's one of the most radical forms of authenticity there is. So keep standing tall in who you are. Keep showing up without apology. Keep showing up without apology. Keep trusting your voice even if it shakes. Keep leading without needing to be the loudest one in the room, because the world doesn't need more arrogance in designer suits or soft voices pretending to be small. It needs more people like you, people who know their worth and don't weaponize it, people who lead with clarity, not ego, people who make others feel seen, not smaller. That's confidence, that's leadership, that's power with heart. You will not be everyone's cup of tea. You will not fit into every room, please every person, or be understood by every mind you meet. And that is not a flaw, that is freedom. Because once you stop living for mass approval, once you stop contorting yourself to make others more comfortable, you finally start living as youthfully, freely, and unapologetically. We are taught, especially early on, that likability is currency. Be pleasant, be agreeable, don't ruffle feathers, don't be too much. And if someone doesn't like you, fix it. Prove yourself, make it right. But here's the hard truth wrapped in love. You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that isn't real. You don't need to shrink your truth to earn a seat at a table that demands silence in exchange for acceptance. You don't need to soften your fire just so someone else doesn't feel the heat of their own shadows. You weren't made to be everyone's favorite flavor. You were made to be authentic. And authentic people, they polarize, not by intention, but by nature. Because when you show up real, two things happen. People who value truth, growth, and depth will lean in. People who are uncomfortable with